Hey everyone, it's me, Alex, and today I'm talking about Lamberto Bava's first Giallo. And this year is this Anchor Bay DVD. It's quite old now, and this is a double bill together with Macabre, which is another excellent film from Lamberto Bava, which I want to talk to you about some other time. Now let's stick with A Blade in the Dark. It's one of my favorite 1980s genre films. It has that something which makes me want to come back to it and revisit it, and I've done so many times. The story, A Blade in the Dark, very derivative. I wouldn't call it an ambitious film, I wouldn't call it, but hey, I'm about to start praising this film, yes, so yeah, it's not original, but it definitely has something. The cast, we have the protagonist Andrea Occhipinti, who's moved on from being an actor to becoming a renowned distributor in Italy, and whose company has distributed some high-profile and prestige international films. But at the time he was just an upcoming actor, and generally with The Blade in the Dark, since the budget was non-existent, there are no name actors whatsoever. It's all young faces, obviously people who agreed to work for next to nothing. And Andrea Occhipinti, who we remember from The New York Ripper, from Conquest, so he made at least 2 films with the great Fulci. He's the main protagonist, he's Bruno there. The pianist, the musician, he's hired by this film director, played by Annie Papa, to compose a score for her latest thriller, horror film, of which we get to catch a glimpse. Bruno has this jumper, he wears this quite horrid jumper, and generally the costumes, obviously I don't think there was a costume designer at all on A Blade in the Dark. It really shows, I think, a very romanticized version of how musicians get to work. Like, he's actually given a place to work by the production, and he's put in this huge villa. There is a piano there, and this whole recording gear is there, and it's incredible. Obviously this wasn't really based on the reality of Italian film production at the time, but it's a nice touch.
Composing music for movies. Interesting.
Having a musician at the center of your murder mystery is always a nice touch. Somebody to have a person who's supposed to be creative, sensitive, somehow a little bit attuned to the finer things, I think that's always nice. So that's Andrea Occhipinti, and then we move on to the female leads, and there is wonderful Lara Lamberti, who was the lead in Fulci's Enigma. Generally, the portrayal of characters' interaction is quite one of the weaker aspects of A Blade in the Dark. It's not, it's not an actor's film, really. The only real standout performance comes from Stanko Molnar, who was the star of Lamberto Bava's debut Macabre, or Macabro as it's known in Italy. And here, in A Blade in the Dark, Stanko Molnar has a smaller part, as a supporting part, as a very blatant red herring. He's this gardener. I think he's called Giovanni. And Giovanni is really super charismatic and quirky, and dressed in this checkered shirt. He's like all nice and stubbly, and he collects cutouts from I think crime from newspapers and some pornographic cutouts, and he kind of tapes them together around in his little nook where he stays, because he lives on the ground. And he's one of the chief suspects. Now the cast is very small, the cast of suspects. Now this is a giallo, this is a murder mystery. They get killed off quite, progressively, so there is very few suspects left to guess from towards the second half of the film. And the film is somewhat longish. There is a slightly trimmed version, and there is the full version. The full version is over 90 minutes, way over 90 minutes, which is, I think, hard to pull off. The female cast, we have Fabiola Toledo, Annie Papa, and we have Valeria Cavalli, who's been in quite a few films. She was briefly with Van Damme in Double Team. She was in Dario Argento's highly problematic The Third Mother. So so that's Valeria Cavalli. So that's pretty much the cast. Obviously there is Michele Soavi, who was still gathering experience as assistant director and behind the scenes, and doing this acting parts for Lamberto Bava, for Dario Argento, for Fulci, for Enzo Castellari. Beware, A Blade in the Dark should not be watched in the English dub. It's a fucking awful English dub. There are some films where the English dub is really good, like for example Lizard in a Woman's Skin. That one has a proper well done English dub. But this here, A Blade in the Dark, this is so cheaply made with lifeless voices and some really badly translated lines. So please, if you can find it, watch it in some other language. That's preferable. Watch it with subtitles. Don't watch it in English because it's really it ruins the atmosphere. If you don't get to enjoy the atmosphere of A Blade in the Dark, there is not much left really, because there are a few murders and there is a little bit of an intrigue. It's limited, but it's there. But the acting isn't there, and the originality isn't, sadly, really there. So yeah, the atmosphere, which is generated through this pulsating and a little bit repetitive, but still nice score by the Angelis brothers, and the atmosphere is also achieved through this incredible use of that single location. There is lots of nighttime exteriors in that little garden around the pool, and there are some great daytime exterior shots just with mainly, natural light. There is one underwater scene where the girl, I think it's Fabiola Toledo, she takes a swim. I think they shot it in winter, so it must have been freezing. Anyway, she takes a plunge and she swims around, and that's a surreal scene. It's a kind of one of the film's more successful moments where A Blade in the Dark, I think, really shines, is that you get this perspective from underwater, somebody peeping at her, and you have that heavy breathing, the kind of killer breathing, which makes it into obviously completely improbable but beautiful sequence, and this is where the film shines. And then there are so many beautiful tracking shots in A Blade in the Dark. Gian Lorenzo Battaglia, who went on to shoot the first two Demons films for Lamberto Bava and Blast Fighter, he's the cinematographer, and I suspect and camera operator on A Blade in the Dark, and they have dolly shot after dolly shot after dolly shot. Obviously no budget, but the camera keeps moving around. It's a thing of beauty to look at. Moments, if you're a filmmaker, or if you're a budding filmmaker, this is a great film to learn some tricks from how to make a no-budget film, which is not going to be amazing, but it's still going to work, despite the limitations. A Blade in the Dark is the first serial killer film from Lamberto Bava, and he would go on to make a couple more equally divisive films, but Blade in the Dark is the one that's considered the most violent, because it has that quite strong bathtub murder scene where the victim gets her head bashed on the edge of the bathtub, and then her hand impaled with a knife, and there is like a throat slashing, and there is like a plastic bag over her head. It's all within one murder. And then there is the killer afterwards who's cleaning up with just like a few paper towels or something. So it just shows you the extent of their madness. So yeah, the film is renowned for its brutality, and it's a low scale, low budget, and it's a low budget kind of gore, but it's definitely there, and it's pretty good again. Many years later, in the 90s, there was a film made around New York City area, which is called Five Dead on Crimson Canvas, an even more low budget film than A Blade in the Dark, but it's like an American homage to the Gialli, and it has some moments which reminded me of A Blade in the Dark. Obviously they had the killer with the completely different look, but there is again the shower murder, and there is that generally sort of very obviously low budget and semi-improvised vibe to it, which somehow reminded me of a scaled down version of A Blade in the Dark. Thanks a lot for watching. It's me, Alex, with Trash Film Addict, and see you next time. Bye bye.